At the end of the first part of this, the first video, I had just talked about how the Canadians had thinned their line, so they filled this gap. But you notice how much longer the line is now, so they have to cover a lot more space. So when the gas cleared, the Germans charged through the opening, expecting to be able to get right through and in behind the French and in behind the British. But they're met by these people that they've never encountered before, these Canadians, and they were absolutely stunned by the ferocity of the fight, so much so that they retreated. However, that didn't mean the end of it. The Germans are surprised, but they're undeterred. So next, they send the gas against the Canadian lines. Now, the Canadians would have retreated had it not been for some Nova Scotia coal miners. I don't know if you know this, but wherever you find fossil fuels, wherever you mine coal, you will find natural gas. And if the old-time miners encountered a pocket of this natural gas, if they didn't have a way to protect themselves, they would die as a result of breathing it in. So they had come up with this makeshift gas mask that they found was useful. And what they did is they took out their handkerchiefs, they urinated on them, and held them to their nose and mouths, tied them around their faces, and that created a makeshift gas mask. So why did this work? Because when the gas comes in contact with the ammonia in the urine, it instantly crystallizes, so it can't get through. So after a while, of course, neither can air. And so what you have to do is take a deep breath, untie the handkerchief, shake out all the crystals that have accumulated on it, re-wet it, and put it back on your face. You can imagine that that was not very comfortable. In this way, the Canadians were able to hold the line and repel yet another German attack. So the Germans, as soon as they fired the gas off, once again, they attacked the line, expecting to be able to come through. And again, they were incredibly surprised to find the Canadians standing and ready to fight. Over the next few days, the Canadians could not possibly hold the line over such a large amount of territory. They'd already thrown back 2 German attacks, and they were afraid that if they didn't consolidate their troops, they would not be able to defend the line. Now, the Germans eventually did give up on this one, and they gave up largely, so it's an Allied victory, but more importantly, it's a Canadian victory. During the battle, the Germans launched 57,351 canisters. That's 160 tons of gas at the Allied lines. The Canadians were so brave, they fought so well, that 4 of them distinguished themselves to the point where they earned Victoria Crosses. I want you to pause right now, and I want you to look up what is a Victoria Cross, and I want you to write it in the notes. Okay, so what is a Victoria Cross? How does one go about earning it? Like, what do you have to do? Okay? The 4 men who earned these crosses were Captain E.D. Bellew, Lance Corporal F. Fisher, Company Sergeant Major F.W. Hall, and Captain F.A.C. Scrimger. I want you to take a moment, again, pause this, I want you to go into one of the encyclopedias, do a Google search, and I want you to look up each one of these men and find out what he did in order to earn that Victoria Cross. Okay, so the questions are, what is a Victoria Cross and why is it significant? And find out what the men did to earn it. The defense of Ypres during this battle cost the Allies 87,223 men. Now that's the Allies. And when we say casualties, we don't mean dead. We mean dead, wounded, or missing. Okay, so about 10% of these will be dead. The rest will be wounded or missing. But of this 87,223, 6,500 were Canadians. And of those 6,500, 2,000 of our guys died. The German troops were very impressed by the fight in the Colonials and marked them out in dispatches to Berlin. That is actually kind of a big deal. To mark somebody out, again, that's that diplomatic speech. It means to praise or to say very, very, very complimentary things about somebody at very high levels. So this is where the Canadian reputation as a tough fighting force was born, and we still hold that reputation today. Another aftermath was that John McCrae wrote his famous poem, In Flanders Fields. We're going to talk about In Flanders Fields in a little bit. I will tell you the story of how he came to write that poem, and you are going to need to take some notes on it. But first I want to finish talking about how Ypres itself remembers this battle. At a place called Saint-Julien, which is right in the area where the Canadians were, there is a monument called the Brooding Soldier, but the locals don't call it that. They call it simply Le Canadien. And this is what it looks like. This was designed and built by a Canadian sculptor. It was the first runner-up in a contest that was held in 1929. The Canadian government was looking for a monument to put on Vimy Ridge, and this was one of the ones that had been entered. It didn't win because the scale is too small for such a large ridge, but it was beautiful, and the Canadian government wanted it built, and so they thought it was more fitting to put it at Saint-Julien, which is the location of Canada's first battle. And that is a close-up of the head of the monument. So, I need you to summarize the story about why and when John McCrae wrote his famous poem. And then you're going to complete the assignment that's in the notes. So let's talk about John McCrae for just a few minutes. John McCrae, by the time, From the time he was a young boy, John McCrae had wanted to join the military. He had always been fascinated by it, and when he became old enough, he applied. However, he had bad lungs, he had asthma, and so he was rejected. So instead, being a very intelligent young man, he instead went to school and he became a doctor. And he spent many years practicing his craft and developing his skill. By the time the war starts, he is now in his early to mid-40s. He is not just a practicing doctor. He's actually a surgeon, and he's more than just a surgeon. He's actually a teaching surgeon. So he's also been training other young doctors on surgery and surgical technique. When the war started, he saw his opportunity to once again serve his country. And so he signed up and was sent not to Valcartier, because he, of course, would not have been going in as a recruit, but rather as an officer. But he did have to go for some training. And it was during that training that he met his friend Helmut. Now, he and Helmut got along famously, and they did all their training together. They were on the same ship going over to England together. They were both sent to the same area of France. The difference is that McCrae was a surgeon, and Helmut was a battlefield commander. So they get to this battle, and of course, McCrae and the other doctors start to set up their surgery. Now, I've been to the location where the surgery is, and it's sort of dug into the side of a hill. And so, of course, Helmut would have been on the field, and McCrae would have been in his surgery. And then, of course, the wounded start to come in. When the wounded come in, they have to be triaged, and they're triaged in one of three ways. You get a green card if you are wounded, and you'll have to be seen, but you're not going to die, so you can wait. Then there is the red, which means we can save this person, but only if we get them into surgery right now. And then there's black. And black is they're still alive, but regardless of how much time and effort and resources we put into this guy, he's going to die anyway. And so those men were left to die. Helmut was brought in, and he had a belly wound, and his insides were basically outside. And he had to be triaged with a black. And that broke McCrae's heart. But he had a job to do. His job was not to sit and be with his friend as he died. He was supposed to be saving the rest of those boys. So he went and he did his job. And when he finished, when he came out, of course, his friend was dead. And so he buried him. And then he took out the pocketbook that he always carried with him, and he sat in the back of an ambulance. By now the sounds of the battle had all but ended. And he wrote, and I've seen the copies, or the actual pages that he wrote, and it's almost word perfect. And he wrote right from the heart, "In Flanders fields the poppies grow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, but now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who died, we shall not sleep, though poppies blow in Flanders fields." You've probably heard that poem many, many times, because you should have heard it every Remembrance Day. However, now you know where it comes from, and every time you hear it, I want you to think about how and where and why it was written. That's all for now. Go and have a look at your assignment, and I will talk to you next time.